Hey guys, this is Benjamin. I go by xBenJamminx from Twitter. I'm one of the co-owners of DailyFantasyCircui, and we are here with Crazy Gaby of Daily Fantasy Circuit. And Gaby has a big story that he wants to talk about. I've heard a little bit about it, but I want to give him the floor. Just let him shoot, and we'll hear exactly what he has going on. So Gaby, thanks for being here. And what's going on, man? I've been seeing some crazy stuff that you've been talking about.
Well, I haven't been jamming like you've been doing, but I've been doing pretty well, especially now that I've come out on the other side of all this and it's sort of reached a resolution, at least in terms of investigations are concerned. And yeah, it's been interesting. Some people think I'm a lunatic. Some people don't care at all. And then I think there's a large number of people in the middle who have very moderate viewpoints, and they like to see all the evidence. And there's a lot of folks that have come out of viewing, or rather, I guess, listening to the podcast that I created that details the entire investigation, which can be found at fearthebeardmedia.com. That's actually my podcasting production company I started about 6 months ago, and posted up just a full breakdown of the investigation. It's about 2 hours in its full form, but I'm going to break it down into 4 smaller episodes for easier consumption. And if people just want to check it out on podcasting apps, they can actually use the iTunes podcast, like Native Stream, Stitcher, Google Play, pretty much any directory where you can access podcasts. You can type in Pianos Hate Podcasts, which is my personal podcast stream that I kind of throw all kinds of crazy shit out on. Doesn't necessarily have to even be sports related. In fact, most of the time it's not. And if you want to listen, that's pretty much the way to do it. Or if you want to ask me questions, you can hit me up on Twitter at CrazyGaby. You can shoot me an email, CrazyGaby, F as in Frank, B as in Bravo, B as in Bravo, at gmail.com. And I'm more than happy to take any questions and dive into any detail from anyone who's interested. So just throwing the plugs out there from the beginning. You guys can rewind later if you want to check that out and write those down. But for now, dude, where do you want me to start?
All right, so I was just showing the screen of fearthebeardmedia.com, and what we're talking about now can be found on fearthebeardmedia.com/daily-fantasy-serial. So let me just show that again real quick for you guys, so you could just.
And by the way, that's Serial with a C, not with an S. It was it's kind of a deliberate play off of the uber popular Serial podcast that everybody seemed to fall in love with. I figured the theme was close enough. I might as well make a little bit of a play on words.
That's cool, man. Well, no doubt, here it is. If you want to check it out, there's a podcast here. Looks like he's showing all the evidence of what he will be talking about. So,
yep.
Let's just get into it. So, coming back to you.
Oh, just go for it.
What's happening, man? So, I don't want to act like I know more than I do. I've seen a little bit of it, but I want to hear it straight from your mouth. So start with the introduction and let's get into it.
Absolutely. I'll be as sort of cursory as possible. If this piques your curiosity again, you can go listen to the investigation in full, but I'm not going to get into the full details here. I'll go over just gloss over the highlights. So, DailyFantasyCircui.com, of course, the business that I started roughly 2.5 months ago. And when that business launched, we launched with 6 partner sites, all of them non-FanDuel or DraftKings sites, Fantasy Draft being one of those sites. And the whole gist of the website was, basically we get referrals and we actually pay out, a leaderboard bonus ourselves to people for playing at our partners. Now, it's obviously a little more complicated than that, and there's a little more to it than that. You can go to DailyFantasyCircui.com and find out about that if you want. That's not what this podcast is about. Just wanted to sort of set the stage to let you guys know that this is why it was such a big deal, is because the entire business model is built around this idea of us sort of scratching the backs of our partner sites, and in return, they scratch our backs by, paying us for the people that we get signed up who didn't previously have accounts to play on their website. Right. And so when I was going through just sort of a routine maintenance test, as you do when you have a website, you're always sort of paranoid. I'm sure you can attest with Daily Roto Sharks. You're always sort of paranoid about everything being perfect, so you go over it 2, 3, 4, 10 times just to make sure everything's perfect and in place. Realized that there was a value in the affiliate code for Fantasy Draft that was actually off. So just to let you guys know the way that some affiliate codes work. So sometimes you'll have just like fantasydraft.com/referral/DailyFantasyCircuit. And that's not actually even what Fantasy Draft's referral codes look like, but that's generally kind of how referral codes are set up around the industry. It'll be very simple with just the website URL, something, your name or your referral code. Well, this referral code was actually what's kind of known as a long tail referral code, where it has all sorts of additional parameters. And what that allows you to do is actually track different campaigns, different sources, different placements. I have a banner at the top of my site with the link. I got a link at the bottom of my site. Which one of them is performing better? I'll make sure I notate the parameters within the link so that I can look at the data through Google Analytics and find out exactly what's working best for my website. And these links are unnecessarily long. I guess technically it's necessary, but they're very long, and to people who don't understand the language of affiliate links, it just looks unnecessary and like a bunch of gibberish. So smack dab in the middle is a field, the R equals field, where there will be R equals and then a value of some sort. And that's where the referral code of the person who's supposed to get credit for the sign up goes. This particular link, though, did not have R equals Daily Fantasy Circuit in it. It had R equals Andy UWF2. And what was significant about it was the rest of the parameters surrounding that R equals Andy UWF2 were all Daily Fantasy Circuit. And that's what really caused me in the first place to take notice, because had it been all equals, Andy UWF2, and it showed a different business completely and it was nothing to do with my business, then my first instinct would have been, this is a mistake. Somebody has just copy-pasted a completely wrong link, and I would have reached out to all the appropriate parties right then and there. It's the fact that this specific referral code was buried in the middle, and only the R equals value was changed, almost as though somebody was trying to mask the fact that they were stealing referrals from me. And that's kind of how it all began.
Were you able to go back and look at maybe what link they sent you, and if it was different than what was actually live on the site?
So I'll get to that, and that's a perfect question that you raise. That's actually where this all ends up at the very end of everything, because at first we did that and everything checked out. Everything looked perfect. And again, that'll be sort of the plot twist here at the end. But that link showing up on our site, check the server logs, because if you've ever ran a site before, you can actually check wherever you host your site. You can look at the logs. It'll show you every page, when it was updated, who had updated it. And basically, those pages had not been accessed by anybody other than my CTO. Well, I'm not going to name him here on this. He's already named on the podcast just because I had to put his name out there. And spoiler alert, it did end up that he was completely innocent. That's part of the plot twist at the end. But I'll just leave it there and say, my CTO looked to be the only one who could have possibly done something. And so that's sort of where this investigation begins, is me trying to figure out who Andy UWF2 is without asking anybody, and then me also trying to figure out who's had access to the site.
Oh, okay. All right, so yeah, continue. So you were doing your back testing, you were looking into the site and everything, and you saw this link was changed. What was the first thing that happened after that?
So, thanks to the magic of Google, you just take Andy UWF2, you stick it into Google, and the first thing that pops up is a Twitter account for a gentleman named Andy Murray. Once you have that name, Andy Murray, you take it over to LinkedIn, you take it over to Facebook, and on Facebook in particular, typed in, Andy Murray and then Fantasy Draft together, just to see if something would pop up, like a shared post or a, hey, sign up under my account. Because if you remember, and a lot of people will, when Fantasy Draft first launched, it was all the craze to shove Fantasy Draft affiliate links in everybody's face. So if you were associated with the site, chances are you were shoving affiliate links in people's faces, trying to get them signed up underneath you. So everything ended up pointing back to LinkedIn and Facebook. And Facebook in particular had two posts that the gentleman, Andy Murray, had shared for a Fantasy Draft affiliate site called Fantasy Draft Nation. Click on that, and boom, the referral code listed on Fantasy Draft Nation, which bills itself as the premier daily fantasy affiliate network, is none other than Andy UWF2. And so at that point, we've got our man, we've got a referral code to go along with it, and now we've got a business that for some reason was getting the credit for referrals on my site.
So who is Fantasy Draft Nation relative to fantasydraft.com?
That is the perfect next question, right? Because you need to know who it is that you're dealing with before you can actually deal with them. So we knew Andy is in on this, but who else is a part of Fantasy Draft Nation? And so before I get ahead of myself and answer that question, I should probably go into the phone call that took place with Andy Murray, because number one at this point is I just want to find out what Andy Murray knows, what kind of information he might have to give. And I had an associate of mine who I'm not going to name because he really has nothing to do with any of this other than the fact that he did me a personal favor here. But he took on an assumed name, Marc Stevens. And if you look on Andy's LinkedIn page, it said that he owned a small business called Wide Reach Media that specialized in developing websites and doing all sorts of other service like social media training, SEO optimization for websites. And it said that it had closed down in December of 2015, but it was showing as still active on LinkedIn, and the website was showing as still active with a phone number to call to ask about services. So we devised a plan, myself and my associate. He would call in as Marc Stevens. He would, have just a random phone number and address that he pulled out of a Chicago phone book for a suburb called Naperville. We just wanted it to be as random as possible. Mm-hmm. And he was going to call in and ask about getting a website built for his particular site. And it was going to be a business site. Again, I won't say the name of the business because I don't want to give anything that could reveal him, but it was a non-fantasy sports business that he was calling about. And then, once he'd sort of shot the shit with Andy and they determined, well, hey, we can move forward with this, talking about the business and everything, my associate, Marc Stevens, asked Andy if he knew perhaps who had created DailyFantasyBootcamp.com, one of the sites that my CTO currently worked on as well. So he asked, hey, this, I met somebody in Chicago at a fantasy sports conference. He, it's crazy that we were both from the same area. I forget his name, but he talked to me about how he's the one who designed DailyFantasyBootcamp.com. He said he does contracted work for web developers. I just wondered if maybe you'd heard of him before or whatever. And instantly at this point, Andy's cadence on the call changed. He became very skittish, and he hurried Marc Stevens off the phone as quickly as he possibly could, basically told him, go contact them and ask them who built their site. If you want to have something like theirs, I can help you, which is very strange just in and of itself, because if you own a small business and you're trying to get money, usually you're not turning away business from somebody who just happens to tell you, hey, I like the way this website looks. Could you build me something like it?
Right. So if you had said a different name besides DailyFantasyBootcamp.com, the tone would have stayed consistent, is what you're implying?
I believe so. I think maybe anything regarding fantasy sports, probably, just given the circumstances of what I'm about to explain, would have. Okay,
so that genre in general,
right? Would have triggered it, but just the fact that the tone of the conversation changed from cordial and very very happy to have somebody inquiring about business to get the hell off my phone was very suspicious indeed. But here's where the first plot twist comes in, and as soon as I give you this plot twist, I'll be very close to getting to who these Fantasy Draft Nation guys are. So what happened next is we're off this phone call. I'm like, wow, okay, so that's definitely something. He was very skittish, but still, that's not a whole lot to go on. At this point, I'm still very skeptical that I'm going to be able to figure out anything on my own. That's when I receive an email, and I want to make it perfectly clear right now, in no uncertain terms, that when Marc Stevens, the assumed name, was talking to Andy Murray, he only gave an address and a phone number of a random Naperville, which is a suburb outside of Chicago. That's it. No email address, and we used *67 to call, so there was no way to trace the callback.
Okay.
So I receive an email from Andy Murray, me. Yeah, about an hour later, and it says, I don't have it in front of me here, so I'm going to paraphrase, but it basically says, Gabriel, thank you very much for your call today, inquiring about building a website. Please let me know when you are ready to move forward. Andy Murray, and then has all the stuff in the signature down below.
So, I actually saw that. Is that on the serial?
Yeah, that's all that stuff. I mean, anything that I talk about, anything that I talk about is going to be located on that post. But yeah, out of nowhere, I get this email. There's no possible way this guy could have got my email address from that call with Marc Stevens. There was absolutely no connection made whatsoever. And not only that, he addressed it as, "Hi, Gabriel."
I got it right here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hi,
right.
Gabriel. It was nice speaking with you today. Please let me know if I can assist you with a website proposal.
Yeah.
So you hadn't spoke to him.
I've never spoke to him. No name had been given other than Marc Stevens, and only a local Chicago suburb address and phone number had been given.
That's pretty wild. So, I mean, he should have never even there was nothing that should have led him to thinking you even knew who he was.
Well, that was my thought too. And so the only thing that I could come up with at that point, and this is where people who aren't paying attention, who aren't considering all the facts, who probably already hated me to begin with, are just going to say, "Conspiracy! That's a conspiracy theory." Well, just using the power of my own brain, you have to have a motive to do something like that. And what is a motive to randomly email me out of the blue if you're scamming me, unless you're trying to get some sort of idea as to whether or not I know something? Because if you're suspicious that that call had something to do with me and you're worried, "Oh no, this guy's figured out that he's the current Marc," well, you're going to do something like this, because if I do know something, maybe I put it out in the open in that email reply, or I call him back and I put it all out in the open. You asshole, I can't believe you're stealing from me. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. But at that point, it still could just be a mistake. It could be explained away. It's not that big of a deal yet. It's just Andy Murray and a bad referral code that somebody can say was an accident.
What do you think he has to do with it, this guy,
right.
Andy?
Right. So the other side of it is, if I don't know anything, Andy can just say, "My bad, it was an accident. I thought that you were the one that called. A person gave me some weird information, and I'm never any wiser at all. I just think that some random spam." I mean, I probably don't even respond to that email. It just looks like spam. Mm-hmm. So you just delete it or whatever.
Yeah, if you had not already been trying to contact them.
Exactly. So I decide that it's time to call back in and play absolutely stupid. And this phone call is recorded, and it is included on the podcast. My phone call with Andy, it's about 8 minutes long. I call in. I could go through every lie that he told at this point, but I'm just going to give you the couple of biggest ones. The first one is he says that Marc Stevens did not give him a phone number at all, and the reason is hilarious. He says Marc Stevens didn't give me a phone number because he said that he was on his work phone and he couldn't receive calls there. I don't know about you, Ben, but if I'm talking to someone and they ask for my phone number, I'm not limited to giving them the number of just the phone that I'm currently talking on. I can give them my cell phone number. I can give them my home phone number. I mean,
yeah, of course.
I would never tell somebody, "No, I'm talking to my work phone. I can't give you any phone number because of that." So that was the reason.
Why wouldn't you? Isn't that what work is for?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what Andy said. I asked Marc Stevens for a phone number, but he didn't give me one. Said he couldn't give me one because it was a work line. He only gave me an email address instead, and he told me, "Just email me. Just email me."
Mm-hmm. And didn't you say you didn't give him an email?
No email address was given to this guy, absolutely at all. And this is recorded. He said, "Just email me, just email me." And you'll hear on the call, in my opinion, his voice very scared, very shaky, stumbling over himself while he talks. But the other big thing that came out in this phone call, outside of the him lying about how he got my email address, the other big thing that came out is just kind of after being on the phone for a little while, and I'm sure he was extremely uncomfortable, he just blurted out, and this is paraphrasing again, but it's exactly what he said. Well, you know what? He, at the end of the call, he was asking about like fantasy sports websites or something like that, and maybe he looked at a website that shows the domain information for like whois.org or whatever, whois.ican or whatever, that shows who owns a website or who built it. Maybe he looked at like all the fantasy sports websites and saw who built them, and then called me because he saw that my name was on one of them.
What?
Yeah,
that's how you were, and that's how he thought you were involved just in that, like, oh yeah, well, I just saw this name, let me contact them.
That doesn't, it doesn't even include me. He said that's why he thought maybe Marc Stevens called him, which still doesn't explain why Marc Stevens, if you're scamming somebody,
there would be no affiliation with you.
Right. And by the way, if you're Marc Stevens and you're trying to steal from me and you are using my identity to try to buy something, you would never give him my actual email address, because that would mean I become alerted to the scam.
Yeah, why would he even bring your name up unless it's kind of like a Freudian slip?
Yeah.
Like you were on his mind and he just happened to bring it out.
So then, of his own accord, shakily and very meekly, he said, I did work with this website called Fantasy Draft Nation back in the day, but that was a long time ago for this defunct fantasy site called Fantasy Draft. They're defunct. They've kind of petered out now. And I built their website for them a long time ago, but that's it. I've had nothing to do with them ever since then. And he brought that up of his own accord.
Right.
I didn't even ask him. I asked him nothing about fantasy sports, and I just played it off like, oh, okay, like, if you hear anything else, let me know. He says, okay, definitely will. Thank you. We hang up. Boom.
Okay, so I have a question, and I don't know if it will lead anywhere in the story itself, but I think this is kind of maybe a devil's advocate question, and for you to just explain yourself, right? So the website isn't started yet, really. Daily Fantasy Circui, like the circuit hadn't really begun on a big level or anything yet, right? So you have the referrals done from all these sites, and now I assume there couldn't have been much money taken out on your end. There probably wasn't much loss, but in any case, a penny is a loss that is stolen, and it all has to do with intent and motive of the person.
Yep.
Now, their devil's advocate wise, people will be coming at you and saying, dude, why are you wasting your time on this? Why are you going after all this when you could just kind of move on and not worry about that money? But I mean, what I would assume is that just on a moral and conscious basis, you're probably thinking, this guy could be doing this all over the place. This could be a scam that's going on, and any bit that's being stolen is being stolen. So I'd like to just hear what explanation you have for that, because that's what I would assume is coming from this. Because you could move on and say, fuck it, let it go. But in the back of your head, you could be like, all right, he may be doing this with other people. So
absolutely.
What are you feeling about that?
And that's you hit on the two main points. And by the way, let me just say on the onset, not the people who think that, but that idea itself is complete and utter bullshit. And people who say that are simply not mindful of the ripples that a situation like this causes and the larger repercussions. And I would almost say also really are only looking out for themselves, which in business, I understand. I'm never going to fault somebody for doing that. But yeah, like absolutely. If somebody's doing this to me, then chances are it's been done before. A scam this elaborate doesn't take place on a singular level. It's going to be on a macro scale because, the money is going to be in, repetition, doing this over and over and over again to many different people. And so my final response to all that, or my final piece of information to throw into all that is, I don't know at this point who's screwing me over. It could be Fantasy Draft Nation. It could be my own CTO. Or could be Fantasy Draft themselves. I have no idea who it is that's actually allowing this to occur. And so, basically to throw it all out in the open right away means that I'm going to have to go with the likely candidate at this point and basically can my CTO and probably have to tell any other sites he's working with, hey, like I'm pretty sure this guy engaged in fraudulent behavior. You're probably going to want to watch your back and ask him about it, at least for your own sake. Right. And B, I might end up still working with the people who are screwing me over, which no, I don't want to do that. So if the rest of the community is being screwed over, I do think there's a bit of a moral obligation. But more than that, like I just don't want to continue working with somebody who tried to screw me over, even if they don't anymore. Right. That's not someone I want to stay in business with. So,
and if it did, and once you got your site really started, if you didn't at least recognize this, all that money would be being siphoned out.
Exactly.
So you'd be losing whatever cash flow that you're getting from these affiliates would be getting siphoned out right back to them based on the traffic you're providing. So I definitely understand that. No doubt. The thing that I would say at least is when it comes to this, they could be doing this on other sites. And what you referenced was when Fantasy Draft first came out, and I don't know anybody who works there or anything like that, and I don't know the people over there. I don't play on that site. But if they're pushing their affiliations and really trying to get people to really use those, how much money could have been siphoned out from other sites over this time if no one else had recognized that?
Yep.
Depending on who's there, if it's Fantasy Draft Nation, if it's someone just using someone at those spots, whatever it is, There could be something nefarious. I'm always down to hear a conspiracy theory. That's just the way I'm built. I don't believe everything I hear, but to see that you have an entire page full of documented evidence and proof, and you seem very passionate about this in general. So that's why I wanted to really get on here, show your side of the story, what's going on, and I think there's definitely merit to looking more into this.
Absolutely. And if I could interrupt there for a second.
Take the floor.
I know that we're about out of time because you have to get going here in about 5-6 minutes. So there's not a lot of time to dive into too much more of the story. So rather than try to get through a bunch of it, I would like to maybe tease some stuff for folks just to let them know what the juicy parts are that should make them want to go and check the rest of this out.
Absolutely. So lead in. Yeah, guys, we don't have too much more time. We got a few more minutes, and Gaby's going to get the floor. There is more to this. We gave you the little brief, what is this, what's going on, and then if you really want to find more information, there's a lot of evidence. There's recorded phone calls, there's texts and emails and stuff. So Gaby, hit the floor, take the floor, and what would you like to tease us with that there is more?
So I'll give you funny detail number one. And actually, before I do that, let me do a tease within the tease. What is contained within that podcast and the evidence that I actually posted on the page with it. You can listen to the podcast, you can read along, see the evidence in real time as it goes. That is just what is purely factual, because what's important in something like this is, especially when you're at a stage here, which I guess technically, if you were in an actual trial, would be called discovery, right? You're right. Finding as much evidence as you can, and you eventually are going to have to submit it to the other side. But for now, you just want to get as much evidence out there as possible for people to see before any accusations get made. And that's one thing that I was very careful not to do, was to make any direct accusations. And I just want people to know that I have a lot more than what is in that podcast. And what's in that podcast and the evidence on the page is more than enough, in my opinion, for any rational person to at least have questions about what's going on, right. Questions that Fantasy Draft, spoiler alert again, they left me completely hanging on. They refused to get back to me after a certain point, and they, as a company, no one at the company will answer any of my emails anymore, will answer any of my calls anymore. They've completely cut me out, and they won't talk to me at all. In fact, Roto Grinders, I made a post over there the other day, not mentioning any of this, but just asking if Fantasy Draft support could hit me up here, because I know that they're often in this channel. My post was deleted by Roto Grinders within 5 minutes. So
wow,
it's par for course, I'm sure, for anybody who knows how the forums work over there and everything goes down. But yeah, to get to the teasing of what the actual podcast will contain. So I ended up deciding that the only way, like, if I call this guy up and ask him to go out to tea, Andy Murray, probably not going to get much out of him. In fact, I figure if he is working with anybody, he's going to be coached to high heaven and back again once they find out that I've contacted him and want to talk more. So I know the only chance I have is the element of surprise. And right. However psycho people might think it is, the only difference that there is between what I did and what a private investigator or a detective would do is that they have a badge or a certification. And I get it that I don't have that. So I was very careful to make sure there was no harassment whatsoever. But I actually went to Chicago, and I staked out the dude's house for about 12 hours, waited until he actually left and drove to a public place, a Walgreens. He went in the store, and I was way back out of the store. I just walked up to him and said, "Hey, man, let's talk."
Andy Murray?
Yeah. Said, "Hey, man, let's talk."
You were sick, Gaby.
I said, "If I have to leave here today and I don't get any answers from you, you're the only name I have linked to this, and I have enough right now that it's not very good for you. So I need some help from you, because if I don't get some help from you, I have nothing else to go on but you. And I'm pretty sure it's not just you that's behind what's going on." And, right as I predicted, I didn't hold him at all. In fact, I was even conscious enough to stand on the opposite side of the driver's side of the car, so he would never feel like I was standing in between him and getting into the driver's seat. We were out in the open where people were publicly around. I just never wanted there to be any way that he could ever claim that there was any sort of threats, or that I was harassing him, or that I was forcing him to stay, outside of his will, which I was not. He stayed willingly, talked to me. I ended up actually getting one of his bosses to be on the phone with me, a man named Mike Frazen, who Mike Frazen is one of the high ups at Fantasy Draft Nation. And he's also runs a company called Great Shot Golf, which I'll get into in that podcast. I'm not going to get into here. And this trip to Chicago ends with me leaving under a bit of duress. You folks with the video I put on YouTube can put 2 and 2 together and decide what you think actually happened. I won't make any definitive statements at this point about that. And then while I'm leaving Chicago and on the freeway, the people from Fantasy Draft Nation, Mike Frazen, I'm assuming, the person I talked to that Andy put me on the line with, the bigwig, must have gotten in contact with Steve Crumbles, one of the 2 co-founders of Fantasy Draft, because Steve Crumbles contacted me almost immediately as soon as I got on the road, wanted to chat with me. I recorded our conversation. It's about 18 minutes long. You guys can listen to that on the podcast as well. And I also have posted all the text messages that I had with him and email follow-ups, where eventually about 5 minutes until midnight, if you guys remember the old Soviet-era nuclear countdown clock, about 5 minutes till midnight, when I told them, Mike Frazen from Fantasy Draft Nation and Steve Crumbles from Fantasy Draft, that I was releasing all the information that I had to the public, which was about a week and a half ago on a Monday, they suddenly, Steve Crumbles suddenly figured out what had happened and took the line of it was an absolute mistake. But as you'll see in the evidence and what I talk about on the podcast, what Fantasy Draft claims happened as a mistake was absolutely impossible to happen in the way it would have had to happen for a mistake. And they tried to confuse me with technical mumbo jumbo, but I had a couple of my friends who are hackers. One of them's a hacker, one of them a web developer for over 30 years, sitting with me, listening to the calls, reading the emails, and basically telling me, no, this is not possible. It could not have happened by accident. Somebody did it on purpose.
So the link was doctored.
Yes, and my own CTO.
That's what this is about.
My own CTO even confirmed once I found out that he wasn't in on it because the link was doctored from day one. He said, yes, this was impossible for somebody to have done by accident. Because what they did, and this is the last thing, and I'll let you get out of here, Ben, what they did was they actually took a link, and you know how normally if you type in a link, it will automatically fill in with the hypertext so you don't actually have to embed a link within it?
Mm-hmm. Right.
They typed in a link, and then they embedded a link within the text of what was a link already, but what was embedded inside was the exact same link with only R equals Andy UWF2.
So they were just trying to reroute?
As a difference, right. But visually, upon visual inspection, the link looked exactly like it should, which is why we missed it the first time. It's only when you copy the link and then paste it, and when you paste a link that's that long, most of the time it won't even show up in the browser. It's so long, so you don't even see that value is incorrect.
Exactly.
And
all right, so I got one last question. Yep. Can you reach out to other sites that have them as affiliates and ask maybe what their links look like on their sites, and maybe see if this has happened in the past, if it's just an error, if it just happened to you?
RotoGrinder's affiliate link is fantasydraft.com/play/RotoGrinders. Or /grinders.
So very simple. Straightforward.
And I'm sorry, last thing here. I know I keep saying that. Last thing.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
The link that they sent that was doctored, that Steve Crumbles sent me, that was doctored, not bad. Again, he kept trying to use the language of bad link. Bad link is when you click it and get a 404 error and it doesn't return a page. A doctored link is when something has been intentionally changed. And so very important to remember that when you're listening to this podcast, because they try to use the word bad link over and over again to diminish the action, which is a pretty common tactic of people who would be lying. That's not to say that I'm accusing them of anything at this point, but that is a tactic that people who are lying would use. So that link was actually sent to us on the first day that the circuit launched, and it was sent to us by Steve Crumbles, who said, the link on your site is wrong. Here, use this link instead. Upon backwards inspection, reverse engineering, the link on our site was not wrong. And in fact, people had already signed up using the link on our site.
So the first one was right?
They would have known at Fantasy Draft that link was correct because people had already signed up using it. But they told us that the link we had was wrong. Here, use this one instead on the day of. We copied it, pasted it. Well, actually, my CTO did without thinking twice because it visually looked correct. And that is essentially where everything ends. The last email I sent to Fantasy Draft was asking them if they could please, because they said this is an accident, it happens all the time. I said, could you please do a screen share with me where you show me and replicate how this accident occurred so I can just visually confirm that it is a very easy, it sounds just like 1 click or 2 clicks accident, that it's not something deliberate. And I also said, could you please also explain the connection with Andy Murray, whose code is the one we're talking about, and why he lied. When I met him in Chicago, there's infinite lies. You guys will find out about it in the podcast. But why he lied all these times to me over and over and over again, there are some questions that just don't line up with what you're saying. And the biggest plot twist at the end is Mike Frazen, the guy who runs Fantasy Draft Nation that I spoke with that alerted Steve Crumbles. Mike Frazen, it actually turns out, was one of the 14 original Fantasy Draft team pros. Actually, when Fantasy Draft Nation first started, that affiliate site, he was on the payroll for Fantasy Draft as one of their team pros. And in fact, from the poker world, their other co-founder, Robert Stevanovsky, worth about $600 million, his company, ACN, that he helped found, is featured on The Celebrity Apprentice, rubbing shoulders with Donald Trump all the time. This guy is at all the major poker tournaments along with this guy, Mike Frazen. And Frazen, the web was basically scrubbed of any mention of Mike Frazen being a Fantasy Draft Team Pro, except for one random blog I found like 10, 15 pages deep on Google from a guy who was detailing exactly what happened when the first 14 people decided to sign up at Fantasy Draft and become Fantasy Draft Team Pros. And there's Frazen right there on the list. But he doesn't mention it anywhere online. His Twitter account's been deleted. Everything has been scrubbed everywhere else.
Very, very interesting stuff, Gaby. No doubt. I think there's merit to at least looking into this, and you know me, like, shit. I'm not gonna be the one doing the investigation, so I'll keep checking it out whenever you.
I want your help. Listen to it. I love your help. I'm
all for, you know, given the exposure and everything, but I would like to look at this for me as entertainment with some substantiated value, and follow along. So you know, thanks for coming on and showing your side of things. I'm gonna go back real quick and just show. All right, here's the site, guys. If you want to go take a look, it's fearthebeardmedia.com/daily-fantasy-serial with a C, and you could come here, check out the podcast, all the evidence and information that he has on here. So I always love a good conspiracy theory. I have no problem checking this out. I've already looked through a lot of this, but you know, like, whenever you want to talk about it a little bit more and we can find some time, you know, I'm all for it. And I really hope things work out for you, because you're a good guy, and hopefully this isn't some nefarious act that's been going on for a while and kind of stealing money from people.
All of you out there, your homework is go check out rotogrinders.com and see how they, over the last month, have started a brand new relationship with Fantasy Draft, where they've been actually celebrating them in all sorts of unique ways, including copycatting my idea for the daily fantasy circuit with Fantasy Draft. Leave it at that.
That's interesting. I didn't know about that. And you know, I've never had a bad word to speak about Rotogrinders in any capacity.
I'm just speaking facts. That's all.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if there's something that needs to be exposed, expose it. That's definitely something interesting. You know, I met Cal and Cam before. They seem like good guys. You know, I don't think, in my personal opinion, I've never seen anything nefarious just from my side. So if there's something that is uncovered that is like that, then let the chips fall where they may, you know?
All in, my friend.
That's it, brother. All right, man, take care. I got to head out to work, but have a good day. Thanks for watching, guys. And once again, check out fearthebeardmedia.com/daily-fantasy-serial. And I'm xBenJamminx from DailyFantasyCircui.com. Take care, guys.
Boom.